We're going to call this January 21st special open meeting of the Board of Education to order. It's now 5:31. Can I get an approval or a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
I'd like to amend the agenda.
Sorry.
There's one thing on the agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to amend it to add two more motions. One to change how we communicate with the superintendent, and a second one to call an additional closed session meeting for Thursday.
Right. Yeah.
For Thursday. I don't think we've got
to amend the
time
agenda to change how we discuss with the superintendent, how we communicate with the superintendent, and to have an additional closed session meeting this Thursday.
So are these scheduling? This sounds like scheduling issue. Is that it? You're just trying to add an agenda item to schedule a meeting. Is that it?
That's right. And also to
right.
Well, the way we communicate.
Second, I think. Did you make the motion, Trent?
Yes.
All right. Second.
Okay.
I thought we already had a first and a second for approving the agenda as presented, and then Trent cut in and said he wanted to amend the agenda. So can we vote on the motion? Can we vote on the motion that's been first and seconded?
Yes, and then we can. Okay.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. How many is that? I can't see.
Okay, what are we doing? So we're not going to approve the agenda for today.
So you may vote yes or no on approval of the existing agenda, Linda.
And if it fails, then we would start over.
Correct.
So how many are in favor?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so yes.
How many opposed?
No. Are you opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, so 3 to 4. Or I don't. What did you vote, Christy?
No, I don't approve it.
You don't approve the agenda?
Not the way it is, no.
Not the way that our agenda is, or the one that they're.
Yeah, she voted no on your motion.
Yeah, like for the motion. I'm voting yes on the motion, or no the way it is. He's requested like another meeting. It sounds.
Oh, I see. All right.
So now, Trent.
Make a motion.
Okay, my motion is to change how we. I would like to consider two other motions at the end of this meeting. One, to change how we communicate with the superintendent, and a second, to have an additional closed session meeting this week.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Move. Okay.
Well,
Normally we'd discuss the motion.
I don't understand what's going on. So yeah, that would be.
Yeah,
that would be
please
great.
discuss, because I'm confused.
I want to change the way we communicate with the superintendent, and I want to discuss that. I have a motion that I'd like to consider. That motion we can discuss later. We already have some motions in our agenda. And then the second one is I'd like to have a second meeting this week in closed session to talk about some other motions as well.
Okay. Do we have enough time? Do we have enough time to publish a meeting for?
You have to give 24 hours notice.
Okay. I mean, I don't care. I mean,
yeah, this is very. I don't know. I mean, this is not how you go about scheduling a closed session meeting by like dropping it in on this existing meeting. I mean,
well, how else would I
could communicating with the board president and the board vice president about scheduling that?
Yeah, we meet like every other week to schedule meetings, so I don't see why this is necessary.
But I've repeatedly asked for meetings in the past, and they've been denied, or asked for closed session portions that are. And they've been denied. So I believe by board policy and statute, 4 or more members are allowed to call a meeting, a special meeting, and I believe that's what Trent's asking to do.
All
So
right, so you want to
I'm
have a
asking to
special
call a
meeting
and
on
if we have 4
Thursday?
votes,
Can
then the
everybody
meeting
meet on
stands.
Thursday?
I think what could happen is if we vote on the motion and then when you get to that agenda item, I think you could have a discussion about timing and things like that, but
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so, I mean, I don't see this as necessary, but obviously, do whatever y'all want. So
it sounds like, Josh, you need a motion to approve the agenda as now amended.
well,
So
yeah.
I'll make that
Okay,
motion.
Didn't we
so
just
fine,
do
can I
that?
get-
Brian has made the motion. I will
Right,
second
we
it.
just did it.
All right.
Oh, we just
so-
did it. Sorry, Linda. You're right.
Oh, yes.
Linda's
Thank
right.
you, Linda. Sorry.
Okay,
So we did miss that. So we just need to call the question.
all right, fine.
And
So,
move on.
all right, let's
the
do
bond
that
issue.
then. And I can't see the gallery view, so everybody hold up your hands, so Linda can count. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you have all the yeses, Linda?
I do, Josh.
Okay. All opposed? That's
Aye.
me. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I can't see, so how many was that?
3.
Okay. All right. So motion passes. Okay. So now to the other item that was on the agenda.
I think we need to vote to approve the amended agenda, or no, we just did that. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're moving on to number 2. The special session item number 1, ballot measures, final review and discussion. So
Move to
I think-
approve the ballot measures.
no, it's just a ballot measure. And there's no,
Oh, no, it's just a discussion
yeah, exactly.
so far.
So
So
anybody have anything to say?
Trent, you sent some different stuff today to the board about
Yes,
your
I
thoughts
did.
about the
Well,
bond.
I feel like we're not really prepared to go out for $15 million to the public. Maybe we should do a smaller bond of either 7.5 or 10 million. That was what the justification is that I sent out to the other board members and Benita. And I just want to sort of consider that we could do that. And then in 2 years' time or so, or even next year, we could go out for a second bond issue once we really sort of have a very good idea about how and what is what are the most important things and how the money is going to be spent.
And why don't you think we've got enough information to ask for 15 right now?
I just don't, I don't feel like we have sort of really figured out what are we don't have a ranking really. We have a list of sort of top priority items. We haven't really had a discussion about how that money is going to be spent. That came up to 8.8 million. If you add on 3 million, that's 12 million, yet you're asking for 15 million. Where is the other 3 million going to go? I just don't understand how that is a good business practice or good financial planning.
I did have an opportunity, and hopefully Lorenzo will be able to join us. He had a 5:30 meeting at the same time, so depending how long we go, he'll have an opportunity to jump on. I did, at the request of the board, have Dr. Dietrich to go back and reprioritize the list based on the ask for that.
Where did that ask come from, Dr. Jameson?
During the last board meeting, the request was that we take the list that was already dwindled down from the original list and to reprioritize those to bring back to the board. So with the Friday being the professional development day, and then also being off on Monday, so Dr. Dietrich was able to do that, and I was going to give him an opportunity to walk through these items. I will say that I did have a meeting right before this meeting with some community members around the items here. just to kind of get their perspective in regards to what's here. There were some questions that were actually asked, and once explanations were given. And the consensus that I got and walked away from that meeting was that they understood why some of the acts were being made, and then gave some feedback and asked questions about process for that. But I'll allow Dr. Dietrich to go through the list based on the ask, and then we can follow up with additional questions from the board now.
Can I ask a question? I thought your text earlier said this was posted. I couldn't find it posted anywhere.
Was it not?
No. So I didn't know if you don't mind just emailing it to us right now. Sometimes it's easier
Yeah,
not
of course. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I thought I linked it. Need to go back into the agenda.
There are 2 copies of the PDF presentation you gave at the last board meeting. Maybe that was one of them was supposed to be this document.
Thank you for that.
I'll add while we're looking for that. To understand just a little bit deeper dive the administration's thinking on what are the needs for the district. I'm also quite keen to receive, hopefully in end of February or maybe in March, the Cordigan study of our buildings and what the needs are, not only in the present moment, but over the next 10 to 20 years. So I think this is all very good. Now, I don't know if this is, since we're in the discussion mode, but I sent an email about an hour or so ago, just to let you guys know. But I'll now say publicly what I wrote in the email, and that is, I'm trying to find a balance between kind of the concerns that Trent's raised here, and also the fact that I want to give as much leeway to the administration to know what exactly what should be purchased with the benefit of this bond. And so I put out what I would, and I'm going to propose this in our next agenda item when we actually move to vote, what I think is a friendly amendment, and that is we just insert the words up to $15 million, because Trent is correct. We haven't been presented with $15 million of items yet. We've been presented with 8.8, and presumably also a lease purchase from the central office building that may be upwards of $3 million. So, I want to give as much flexibility to the administration as possible here, while also recognizing that a lot of these kind of building assessments are incomplete at this stage. And so if we could say up to $15 million, and then of course the admin would come back to us between now and the time bonds would be issued, and with a more finalized list. And then we're, I think, in a better position, and it kind of, I'm hopeful. I haven't spoken with Trent since his emails went out, but I'm hopeful that might be a middle ground here, and that's going to be I'm advocating that we think of inserting those 2 words, up to 15 million, because no doubt this list we've just. Yes, I believe so.
That could work.
Now, I've only consulted one attorney, and that's Nelson Mitten, who spoke, at the board last month, and he indicated that it's perfectly appropriate to insert those words. Lorenzo, if he ends up joining us, I would ask him certainly as well. I certainly wouldn't want to do something we can't do, but at least I heard from Nelson, because I was curious. Is that it's a good question, Josh, and I was curious, and at least I asked him. But I don't know any other lawyers to call other than you and Jenny, and you're here now, so you can also weigh in if you want. But I'm hopeful that might alleviate some of Trent's concerns. It might alleviate the burden on the admin to come up in this meeting with $15 million worth of items. I'm just looking for a way to smooth over what surely is still a number of developments that need to take place over the next couple months. Thank you.
Well, Brian, I appreciate this suggestion if it's possible, because I was really struggling with this decision because I know we need money, right? It's very clear we have things to fix, but I was very concerned because we just now, approved a contract to take a real deep dive into our systems. And I'm very concerned about, what that might reveal, whether that could, we went through this whole list. And as Katie pointed out, this is where we are now, who knows? And so it's hard. I don't feel comfortable voting for 15 million at the full max, not knowing, and earmarking, not knowing what we have. So if, for me, I would be very comfortable with that change because I just don't feel like we have all the information for the totality of the picture, but I do know we need money. So I would be in favor of that if it's allowed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm nervous to tinker with the bond language without the bond counsel here. And Jenny, I appreciate you bringing that up as well, because I think the challenge with asking the administration to develop this list is that it makes these projects seem real, right? And what I was trying to stress last meeting is that while this is our best guess right now, it isn't the final list that we're locked into for when the bond at whatever amount might be approved, whether it's this year or in future years. And so, I mean, I think that I was actually reflecting today on what happened with Prop K. And that was the bond that allowed us to do the preschool expansion and renovation. Now, what we originally proposed with that was establishing a completely different building for preschool. We were trying to buy land. We were trying to buy a building to rehab. We were trying to do something that looks vastly different from what we proposed to the community when we went out to them. However, it's the same end result of having additional preschool classrooms, additional space in that building to serve K through second, and was flexible to the amount of money that we had, the spaces that were available at the time. So I just, again, want to stress, and that is its own communication challenge, right? Because we told the community that we were going to do one thing and it didn't look exactly the same way in the end. And I don't think there are many people who would say it was a bad result, ultimately. So, I hear you. I hear the ongoing request to move from having bonds be our sole way to handle maintenance. And I think that this cushion also helps us to transition from years and years and years of back maintenance and not planful forward thinking to getting to the place of this bond being large and encompassing some amount of unknowns, so that we don't have to do this again in the future.
Sorry,
I
go
think
ahead.
that here's kind of my concern. I sort of share it with Katie. I'm not sure whether or not Nelson Mitten's malpractice cover insurance is going to want to cover if he's wrong about this. We can certainly ask bond counsel if they can do it. If we're going to have another meeting in 2 days, let's reconvene it then and discuss it. But I am reticent to, even though it seems like it's a simple change, I don't know if there's a reason why we could or couldn't do it. And I think that it's important that we have that reassurance. So why don't we do that?
Well, I'm willing to, I think another way, my preferred way is just to put up to, insert that into the bond language. Another option, which would be my plan B here, still trying to look for some middle ground, is leave the bond language intact, but just attach a request from the board tonight that the bonds are not issued until we have a comprehensive, I'll just call a final list of the projects that they want to do. Because it sounds like there's a desire to have another check-in on this list and to verify that it's in fact the right list and the right number of things and at the right prices. So I'm just trying to look for some way to split the difference here.
Brian, I did.
That might.
Well, I think that the issue with that though is that if we have that, are we able to? I mean, that's not going before the voters. That we have a list that we're waiting for the bonds to be issued until there's a full list, and so. Again, like I don't think we can tack on. I don't think we can really monkey around with the process too much, or certainly not without the people that know how to do this as guidance. And so again, like neither of those are bad ideas, but I just don't think that we can make those decisions tonight without talking to council.
Well, the other approach would be to just sort of, we can approve 15 million, but we agree that we're only going to release a certain number of bonds this year. So we could go to, yeah, I see Bonita, so that we could go we could release 7.5 million this year and then see how we get, what we do, and then do it again the second year. If we have approval for 15 million, it doesn't mean we need to get all those bonds up front. In fact, we start paying interest on them.
I did get a response. I was trying to reach Sean from Gilmore and Bell. And Brian, I do want to apologize. I've been in meetings for the most part of the day, so I have not seen your email. But as soon as I look at it, if there's a need for me to respond, I will do that. So my apologies in advance. It's been
no, I didn't. I was just throwing it out as an FYI that I would raise it tonight, so nobody was surprised. It was just like an hour ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, Did Sean give a response? Did he?
I did. Sean didn't pick up, but I did send a message to Lorenzo asking him. He's indicated as he presented in our last meeting, you can't put language up to 15 million, but he says similarly, we could do 15 million and look at the projects. He said you only can use the funds based on what you can spend in those 3 years. So we do have the option of actually doing that. And I'm going to actually mute. This is Sean Flynn, just to ask some additional questions.
So I guess, something, Katie, to your comments, and something else I'm considering is that, this is something, we agree if it goes on the ballot, but the voters have to decide if they approve it. And so I'm trying to balance that against, we need them to approve it. And so I guess for me, showing them a level of diligence that we're still providing to make sure that we're spending their money wisely, it wouldn't be hard for them to look and see, well, we still don't have a full list. You have this outstanding, report that's going to come in 2 weeks before we vote, and so I guess just communicating to them that we will be very responsible with their funds. We will make sure by the time we actually, get the bonds that we will have a thoroughly curated list that has planned ahead into decades to see what is most needed. And I guess that's also, what I was just trying to balance is a message to the community, considering 5 years ago, they gave us 30, they approved 30 million. And here we are 5 years later asking for half that. I know a lot is happening, but, and we know that, but, not everyone does or realizes. So that was just sort of also what I was trying to balance. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. I think the one other thing that's really weighing heavily for me right now is, the request to increase on the other side, the levy increase. We will quickly lose that benefit if we have to pay for surprises with, broken air conditioners or broken heaters or, things like that in the coming years. And so I would really hate for us not to be able to realize the full amount of a tax increase intended to raise teacher salaries, because we are trying to, squeeze maybe, a few more pennies off of the debt service levy. And again, every penny is important. And I think that's one of the major tensions that I'm feeling. also really, Trent, your list of things that are deemed, non-essentials, isn't the same as I think anybody else's list of non-essentials, right? And
yeah,
so,
I know. It's mine.
Yeah, I mean, I do recognize that we are all volunteers here, and we do have, paid professionals, a number of them that are working on our behalf. And I really think that especially Dr. Dietrich and, the team that he has assembled, both with external support and internally, is one that I really trust and, want to make sure that we are putting as much flexibility into the hands of the professionals to do the work that we pay them to do, is also a part of this for me.
So I was able to get Sean from Gilmore and Bell. So Abby is in the process of actually sending him a webinar link. And so I was hoping that Dr. Dietrich could go over the reprioritized list, maybe give some additional context in regards to the COPS. And then hopefully by then, Sean from Gilmore and Bell will be on, if that's okay with the board. Awesome, thank you. Dr. D, if you want to go ahead and jump in.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, I know there's a number floating around that it was $3 million for this building. To clarify that, it was actually, we did not use that full amount on this building. Part of that amount, and I would have to defer to Chris, I would give some preliminary numbers, but some of that, and through COVID and the increase of construction, there were school districts that went, 20, 30, 40. If you watch the news, there was one school district who went 100% over budget on a building. I believe we used around $200,000 of that COPS towards finishing the middle school, high school building, which was really, really good compared to what other school districts were going through. So I just want to clarify that we did not use a full $3 million for this building. So moving through the bond projects priority list, something to keep in mind, all of these were a priority 1, okay, at some point, right? So there are a lot of items that have fallen off this list because, so we're already dealing with a pared down list. So in history, these were all 1s, and now we're reprioritizing number 1s, okay? So the additional electronic door access, and those were for some additional doors at the Early Childhood Center, and also upgrading. We kept the old lock system here at the central office to make sure we were being conscious of dollars spent. It would be updating that to match the rest of the district. Okay. I don't know in what detail, Dr. Jameson, you want me to go into each one, but that was the reason for moving that into 2. For academic programming, these were not items that were going to keep the lights on, keep water out of the building. One of them is absolutely necessary, and that is getting our curtains replaced or recertified. And that is a significant cost. It's something that, should have been done already, and something that is critical for us to complete. For infrastructure, it looks like I missed a 1. If somebody can scroll down, I don't know who has the power of the scroll. Roof repairs is a 1. And then anything again that wasn't keeping water out, or if we don't do it, it's going to create a significant cost in the future if something were to go wrong. So going down that, for example, and some of them, we don't have a choice. The distribution antenna system is something that we have already had conversations with the fire department, and there is no first responder communication in that area for the fire department. And, a fire marshal has the authority to walk in and say, fine, you don't want to do it. You're just not going to use the area, and they're going to shut that down. So that is something that has to be completed. They've been very good at working with us, but it does need to go in. The other 2 is HVAC controls at the ECC. I put it as a 2, but it's something we experienced this morning. We have controls on the rest of our buildings. We knew when Manny and I got up and had our first conversation at 4:30 in the morning, we knew exactly which units went down overnight at our high school and at our elementary school. We did not know at our ECC. And we had to put boots on the ground to walk the building. Okay. So that's the reason for that. But is it going to keep the lights on? No. Is it going to keep water out of the building? No. But it is costing us money. Obviously, furniture we kept as a number 1. It's something that students have been asking for, teachers have been asking for. It's something that's needed. Moving down, these are items like stairwell and concrete improvements. We can forego it, but they're going to continue to crack if we don't epoxy them now or put some type of coating on. And that 75,000 is going to climb as those areas continue to deteriorate. The structural wall, historical wall tuck pointing, again, around the ECC, that tuck pointing is starting to fail. Kids are picking at it during recess. It's again, that's going to be a cost that continues to grow. I have elementary and ECC kitchen. I moved as a 2. It is something that is very much needed, but nowhere near as much as the secondary kitchen. That secondary kitchen renovation, we were right back in there today. We had another dishwasher issue in there. That is something that, as our MOT walked through, that was ranked as the number 1, right up there with the track. It is just continuing to fail, and honestly, it's a money pit. And then the hot water plumbing, we have hot water. We don't get it as fast as we need it. So that's going to be new circulation pumps, opening up some of the calcified pipes that are throughout the building. We're getting hot water, but again, we don't get it very fast. And, it'd take a long time to make up $700,000 in a water bill. But also as a school district of sustainability, we're throwing a lot of water out, waiting for hot water to come to our way when it's needed. And then on athletics, we left all of them at a 1 except for the track and field lighting. It does make me nervous to put in a brand new track, a brand new field, and then 2, 3, 4 years later, go out there and put machinery on it and hope that, it's, they do it every day. But I wouldn't want to be the person that has to make that phone call that we had a vendor on our track that damaged a brand new lanes for our runners, and now it's not available for another year because it needs to be repaired. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just as a quick note, Sean Flynn was able to join and he's on. Sean, there were a couple questions about the board and ballot language, if we can say up to 15 million. And thank you in advance for making yourself available at short notice.
No problem. Good evening, everyone. So the ballot language, you go to the voters, you ask for a certain dollar amount, and you state the stated impact to the debt service levy. There is no requirement that the full amount be authorized by the board. The voters are merely approving whether words are not up to $15 million. And so when any bond issue is subject to approval of the Board of Education and adoption of a resolution. And so whether you end up issuing the full 15 million or something less, that is always up to the discretion of the board. You are merely getting authority from the voters to issue up to 15 million.
Okay. So the up to language is implicit in the existing bond language.
That is correct. You're not required to issue the full amount if you decide not to.
And we can issue bonds in tranches up to 3 years, correct? So we could do 7.5 and then 7.5, or we could do 5.55 over 3 years.
You can actually do it longer than 3 years. So once you issue bonds, you have to spend the money within 3 years. But if you decide to wait 5 years, you could wait 5 years to issue those bonds.
But we will, it should be noted too, that we will have to pay cost of issuance if we go out and price and sell again, because we're essentially doing another issue. So that is money out of the number, but.
About how much are those costs? Do you know?
And how do they compare to the cost of paying an extra year of interest?
I think what most financial advisors would tell you is that when they estimate cost of issuance, this is just a ballpark number, is 2% is the cost of issuance. But Chris is right. Every time you do a bond issue, there's just a certain amount of fixed costs that go along with each bond issue, and it's roughly 2%.
Can we call the question? Can we call the question at this point? Or sorry, this is just discussion. Can we move to action items at this point?
I think it's
I
just.
think it was just on the bond. It was just on the bond.
I think we
still have the tax levy as well discussion if there's any. And also, thank you, Mr. Flynn. That was helpful because I think, a lot of us have not participated in this yet, so we weren't aware of all the parameters around how you could use the bonds, how they're off. So then, one question is that then we as a board, if they are approved, we would at a future meeting vote as a board to approve issuance of the bonds.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, we'll move into the tax levy or debt service transfer to see if there are any additional questions in regards to that particular item.
I do not. I just wanted to make sure we at least offered the chance if someone did, but thank you.
And I do see Lorenzo joining currently too, if there are any additional questions for him to ensure that those questions are answered. I know Trent said that he had a few questions as well. So just kind of wanted to give an opportunity if there are any.
Well, I'm just wondering if we should issue a smaller bond or at least get a smaller. It's easier to pass if it's less money, and I'm not sure if we know how to spend 15 million. But if we put in, up to 15 million, or we just say 15 million, and then we're going to make a decision later about when we issue the bonds, it's sort of the same thing.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Lorenzo, thank you.
Okay. So was that question, I'm sorry, I'm in my car. So was that question for me, Trent?
Mr. Flynn is here, and I think he answered the question, which is that the language of the bond issue doesn't really matter because we don't have to issue bonds immediately. We can issue them anytime. Well, I guess he said maybe up to 5 years from now, and then we can also issue them in lower amounts than what is approved.
Yes. So what we have seen is that we've had kind of my thought is if you voted $15 million, you can issue 10 million in the first tranche, and then if 3 years later or 4 years later you wanted to go back and issue the remaining 5 million once you solidified projects, you certainly can do that because the authorization had not expired.
And we can aggressively request that whatever the debt service levy rate that is presented to us to approve every year is set at, a minimum. Obviously we have been aggressively paying down debt over the last few years. And so the debt service levy, has been elevated. And, obviously that is well within our control every year to adjust.
So at the same time, we want to take that 50 cents out of the debt levy. And so that's going to limit how much we can really borrow.
Right. Well, a couple of things. If you take the 50 cent, that's taking your debt service levy down to 85 cents, which the district could issue the 85 million. I mean, sorry, the 15 million reasonably and keep your debt service levy at 80 and keep your debt service levy at 85 cents and keep your fund balances above 50%. Now with the geo levy, the voters are actually voting on an ad valorem tax. So you have the reasonable expectation to keep that levy at 85 cents. But if assessed valuations should drop or something along those lines, you could levy more if necessary, but the reasonable expectation is to keep that at 85 cents. And that's what you put in the language.
Well, and as I remember, this is from now quite a while ago, that if we do lower it at 85 cents, within a couple of years, we will have paid off enough that we could actually borrow 20 million instead of 15. So there is, there's like a 2-year window where we may actually be able to borrow more, which might set up for the sort of 10 plus 10 or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's an option, but you have to think about your public in terms of, and I'm not a Maplewood resident. If you go back 2 years later, would you still have favorable outcomes in terms of the public being behind you, knowing they voted 10 million just 2 years ago? So you just have to weigh that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, because in my experience, I just have not seen a lot of school districts or just issuers to that regard, go back to voters in a matter of 2 years or for additional bonds.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Josh, just so you know, Josh, I'm ready to move to action items. I don't know if there's anybody else, but I would encourage us to move to action items.
Josh, I think you're muted.
Turn right onto St. Ferdinand Street.
I'm sorry, I'm directing, have directions on the background.
You weren't kidding. You weren't actually moving in the car.
What's that?
You're actually in the car, but you're moving.
Yeah, exactly. I am moving. I'm actually headed to another school district, which at 7 o'clock they want me at the Afton. They're putting something on the ballot for 30 million.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, Lorenzo.
And thank you, Mr. Flynn, too, as well, for taking the time to talk to us.
Anytime, you're welcome.
Josh, I think you're muted.
I am muted. Okay. So we had a first and a second.
No, we just all said we're ready to move to action items.
Oh, okay, fine. So can I get a motion to approve the bond as presented?
Motion.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
Motion to approve. And I didn't get any other recommendations. So motion to approve the election resolution as Prop B and Prop E as presented.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed?
I'm not opposed.
Okay.
I just couldn't unmute quick enough. I'm aye.
All right, so you're not. Okay. All right. All right. So that passes. And now for the housekeeping issue, the figuring out a time.
Josh, just stop and let somebody put a motion on the table.
Okay, sorry.
You're muted, Trent.
Yeah, I have these motions. I meant to send them sometime during the meeting and then I didn't. All right. I'm just going to read out the motion and then we can discuss it. So I move to provide broader communication between the superintendent and the Board of Education by requiring that all dialogue concerning agenda items must be communicated with the entire board 48 hours prior to setting agendas publicly. So in due time to adjust agendas prior to public announcement, that's in parentheses, and direct that no informational items may be added to the board's review for the board's review after posting the meeting's agenda and informational items publicly.
Second.
I'm not quite sure about the second part of it because occasionally things do sort of come up last minute where we might have to like approve, you know, some sort of something, you know, that just pops up. That's happened a number of times where we've had to add stuff last minute. So I'm not quite sure about that part. I mean, I don't have any issue with.
We already have a policy on how agendas are made, and I think if there's a desire to revisit that, we should do that by revisiting the policy on that in a board meeting is fine.
Okay.
I guess one question and that's fine. I guess I'm curious. You know, one thing that I'm struggling with that's been really hard during this last 8 months is that the agenda is released on Friday, right? Sometimes there's information attached. The agenda items are there. So for me, it's not necessarily that the agenda items are added later. It's the fact that they're there, they've been there. The information's not there. The information's added Tuesday, or in the case, last week, you know, something that had been requested Friday wasn't added till Wednesday night. So it is very difficult considering we all have full-time jobs that things are consistently added at a later date. So I guess for me, I would love some clarity around that. In general, the requirement is the information is there when it's released. And then I understand there will be times where there's a one-off, but it is very difficult. We are often reviewing hundreds of pages of documents to then have to go back and figure out something was added later. Because we're also, even though I've requested it multiple times, not notified when something's added later. So if that's through a policy, that's fine. But I would just really love to address that at some point here soon. So I don't know if anyone else has.
That's the same reasons that I would like to address it as well. We can amend the motion such that we say that, you know, in the rare case when we need to add something at a later date, that we are notified that that change has been made and under what, which agenda item. And I mean, another problem is that, you know, you've got a few hundred different things that you're supposed to read through. One new item pops up, you don't really notice that or see it. And so now you're having to sort of keep a mental picture of every single item that you've reviewed and whether or not a new one pops up. And, you know, I can spend hours and hours going through the agenda trying to review things, and then it changes and I don't know about the change. Or I get to the meeting and I'm surprised by the change. None of those are good ways to sort of conduct the meeting. And so I'm trying to
clarify
around that.
To clarify, the agenda is not changing, but attachments to the agenda may have changed.
The information around the point that's up for discussion or up for vote.
I do want to add, like, the agendas are built based on the perpetual calendar and the meetings that I have with Jenny and Josh. I will say that depending on either questions that are asked from the board or something that comes out of that conversation results in the presentations having to be changed. And typically when the agenda is released, if there's an item not attached, that information is shared in the email that's sent by my assistant, Kat Norton, with an explanation for why it's not included. And so in some cases, whether it's a personnel item, which those change frequently, or if I'm reviewing something that was originally posted and there's an error in it, those documents for presentations may not necessarily be beneficial to do a strike through, but for those items where the changes are being made for that, again, I do apologize, as I mentioned previously, in regards to the request that was made on Thursday. Friday was a no school day. I was actually out having a procedure done and Dr. Dietrich was not in. So that information, with everyone being off on Monday, I thought I attached the appropriate document and I did not. But for the most part, the agenda items, unless there is a question asked by the board, those items are loaded and ready to go. And when they are not, they are communicated in the email from Kat Norton indicating why. So I definitely will ensure that those items are up. And if there are changes that don't require a strike through, but when we are able to do that, which was the last request, we have been able to do strike throughs for changes. So I guess I need more.
Well, there's a second part to this motion, which is to be notified of what the agenda items are 48 hours before it goes live so that they could be adjusted by board members. And so it's sort of it's basically a courtesy item where the board is going to understand what the agenda is going to be. And if they don't see something on there, that it can be added before it goes live a week before the actual meeting.
So it sounds like we need to maybe, and I guess Jenny and Josh, because currently we meet Fridays, 8 a.m. to review the board agenda, which is built from the calendar, the perpetual calendar for those items, with the exception of new ones. It sounds like we want to move that meeting forward, or so that that agenda can be shared before it's published.
Well, I think that my understanding, I think, of what he's saying is like maybe just keep the Friday meeting, but you would have a circulation of topics that Wednesday or whatever, and then if there were any changes, then those changes would be made by Friday. Is that correct, Trent?
Yes, that we would understand what the agenda was going to be on Wednesday. So if there is something that we want to add or that we want changed or we don't understand, that we can comment on it before it goes live out to the public on Friday after your 8 a.m. meeting.
So just as a note, the board can see the draft agenda. So those are built for the year. And so if it's an item that is one of those add-ons, like I think Josh said, so if you're having difficulty seeing the draft agendas before, please let me know, because the draft agendas are built with topics. They may not necessarily have the attachments at that time, but I can definitely make sure that all of the information is in by Wednesday so that when you do go into Assembly, you're able to see that. So that's easy. I can do that.
Well, I think that, it's a matter of, what do board members want to discuss? And that's not really getting onto the agenda necessarily.
Okay.
Ryan, do you have something you wanted to share?
Look at it on Wednesday, and if what's on there, if you wanted to add something else, then, here's kind of the problem though, is that, very rarely would we not put something on the agenda that somebody wants to talk about unless it's either overloaded or it's something that, I don't know, for whatever reason, but, I don't think that that's necessarily an issue. My only concern though would become if there was a, what's it called? Like a dispute, then we would need a vote to put it back on the agenda. And then we'd have to have a meeting to do that or whatever. Why don't we try that? Why don't we just try the Wednesday thing? People add what they want, and then we'll see how that goes. And if that's working, then that's working. And if it's not, then we can reassess.
I mean, a draft of the February agenda is already viewable by us if you log into Assembly and you go to upcoming meetings. So
yeah, I think that's a newer thing. I think
what's the purpose of the
we just got access to that in January.
The purpose of the Friday meeting is to go over what is going to be on the agenda. Occasionally, there are other things that need to be added. Occasionally there's things that pop up between when the like, oh, we were reviewing X, Y, and Z, and this became an issue, so we need to add this to the agenda. Or, hey, why don't we? A number of times we've rearranged the agenda because certain things make more sense to be somewhere else, like later in the year. It's basically just to have a discussion about what's going on.
And I will say that I am not opposed to adding any of the items. So we've been from the past and since I've been here using, we started the perpetual calendar, which has been very helpful. And so if items are being added, my assumption is that those things are being shared before the Friday meeting, but Wednesday may help with that, Trent. So I'm not opposed. I just don't know if the agenda is already set and established, but I agree. Let's see what happens with the Wednesday date and see if that helps. And to your point, Jenny, we still are learning Assembly, so Kat was able to work with them to ensure that the board can see the draft agendas.
Well, I think the problem is that you alter the draft agenda on Friday, right? At least sometimes. And then we don't really know what it is until it's already come out. Our only opportunity to introduce any sort of topic into the agenda is prior to publishing it in that week, on the Friday, the week before the meeting. And so,
So I think, Trent, I think that's what we're saying. I think the idea, the proposal of Wednesday, I know something that I've used in other roles in the past is that everyone had, until Wednesday before the agenda was published to submit items for the agenda. And I think that's a good timeline so people have time to process prior. So I think that's the suggestion on the table. I mean, I think that would be helpful to start with. I mean, doesn't that address the knowledge piece of knowing what's on the agenda? Trent, does that answer your issue?
I'm looking back through the motion here. I mean, it addresses the 48 hours part. It still doesn't address the not adding anything to informational items after the Friday. I mean, I'm okay with it with adding items as long as we're notified of exactly what has changed and in what section, so that we're not spending tons of time looking for a change that we don't even know exists usually.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Trent? Thank you for pulling that out. When you say informational items, are you talking about, like, we have consent, study, action, or are you saying, like, if there's a change
here's an example from tonight. We have, I think it's 4 documents, it might be 3, for this action item that we just voted on. So there are 4 PDFs there. So, if that, maybe let's say I look at it on Sunday night and there are 4 PDFs there. I get to Wednesday and now there are 5 PDFs, but I didn't really keep track that there were 4 on Sunday and 5 now. And so it's just very difficult to track whether or not you have reviewed things and you are prepared, or that some new information has come to light in terms of the agenda. So we're getting stuff late and it's not working for me, at least.
And so I guess my suggestion would be, even if we are forewarned something might be late, it would be very, very helpful to then get an email when it is attached.
Got it.
So that we know it's been attached. And the sooner the better, because a lot of us have a lot of other engagements. And so sometimes the weekend is the best time to do it. And it's hard if it's attached Wednesday night to find time. So that is just what I think would be really helpful going forward.
Got it. That's helpful.
Thank you.
So do we need a vote and a motion to change these things, or are we just going to go on sort of an agreement basis?
I mean, I don't.
In terms, Katie mentioned revising the policy. I mean, these are the types of things that I would like to do to revise the policy. Maybe it isn't the time to do it right now, but at least a motion will move us forward to where we can communicate what we want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, to sort of write down the nuts and bolts of it, we'll have to revise the policy to do that. But I think that we can all agree that why don't we set a deadline for revising the policy. I'm not sure how long it would take to write up, you know, like a couple of paragraphs worth of just memorializing essentially what we've just said. And so I don't think we need to. I think we should set a date to have the policy revised to incorporate the suggestions that you made. Does that make sense?
Would you like for me to add it to, because the draft agenda for February is already drafted with potential policy batch coming forward? I can add that policy onto the board agenda if that's the will of the board for discussion.
That sounds fine to me. Is that okay,
so
Trent?
I withdraw my motion. I'd like to add another motion that the motion is to review the.
I want to make sure though, Trent, did anyone else, sorry, before you move on, Brian, you had your hand raised several times and I don't think you ever had a chance to speak. So I want to make sure everyone.
No, I was going to affirm a couple things that Dr. Jameson was saying a little bit ago, and also a couple things that Trent was saying. Yeah, it's just so the other board members know, it has been my experience multiple times that I sit down on Saturday mornings, read through the agenda, all the attachments, and then when I show up at the Thursday meeting, things I read on Saturday are either no longer there or they've been changed. But after Saturday morning, I don't look at the documents again because Saturday was my time to prepare for the board meeting. And so, but what I'm hearing from Dr. Jameson is that maybe I need to carve out some time, not on Saturday, but I need to maybe wait until Tuesday. And I'm willing to adjust that, but let's set a date before each meeting where at that point it's fixed and it's not changing anymore short of an emergency. And I think that's what Trent, if that's what Trent was getting at, I'm supportive because I have had that experience multiple times where things I read and thought were ready to go turned out to have been changed between Saturday and the following Thursday. And the other piece was could we get an email on Wednesday from Josh that says, hey, this is your chance. What do you want added to the agenda for next week's meeting? And we'll discuss it on Friday. That email kind of coming out pro forma on a Wednesday, giving us 48 hours notice. That would be nice. I don't know how often I would want to add something to the agenda at that point, but that would be helpful to just make everything clear. If those two things are done, let's just call it the 2 48-hour rules. 48 hours to summon agenda items and 48 hours before the meeting, that at that point it's fixed, documents are not changing. That would go a long way, I think, to help, certainly help, as I understand the problem. But
okay,
I've just kind of rolled with it, but I see the problem that Trent was raising.
I'd prefer, well, you know, on the changes to the informational items, I'd certainly want more than 48 hours if possible. But let's review it in February, maybe considering the language of the motion that I sent around by email and I just read off earlier, and we can look at that as a change items to a policy statement in February.
Yeah, and I think this is more than just a policy change. This actually is probably related to our lack of agreement on protocols for the board and our interactions with each other and with the administration. So I think we need to consider both of those things in February.
Okay.
All right. So you've withdrawn that portion of it, but you had something else.
So we don't need a vote. So I have a second motion, and I move to direct the president to create and advertise an online meeting in closed session of the MRH school board in the normal places of announcement for Thursday, January 23rd at 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in concordance with subsections 1, 12, or 13 of section 610.021 of the revised statutes of Missouri to discuss various legal and personnel matters to be later itemized with due notice and an agenda sent to all board members.
Okay.
Second, I'll second it.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're opposed to it?
No.
Oh, I was going to say if I
I
could
was
get your motion. Okay. All right. So is anybody?
I'm going to abstain. I don't have enough information to understand what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm gonna abstain too, because I'm just confused on what he just said.
Is this a
I think
meeting that I need to?
he just wants to add an executive session to discuss things amongst the board.
Is this a meeting that I need to prepare for?
No, it doesn't sound like you're. Or is it? I thought it was just the board.
And this is on the 23rd?
Apparently.
I guess my concern is that there's a meeting being called with not the participation of the superintendent. And with that, my thought would be that the conversation is about either me and my contract. So I'm just trying to figure out if I'm being excused from the meeting, having some insight into what that conversation is about, because I have not at this time been excluded from any of the executive session meetings.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I do not have any intention of discussing your contract, if that makes you feel better.
Well, I guess my wonder would be if we are collaborating, why I would not be participating in the dialogue.
These are good questions.
I have no idea.
Well, you just voted for it though, Josh. So I believe this has been passed, and
right.
We're doing it on Thursday.
Are you able to give a little more clarity? Because I'm like confused about what the whole paragraph you just said.
He did send it in an email, Linda, for the like while we've been meeting. So
okay. All right. So how do I send out a can we get
you need to direct the board secretary.
So it just sounds like we're meeting again on Thursday at 6:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to clarify, it's my understanding that I am not participating in this meeting.
As far as is that what you're saying, Trent?
I think so. I think that this is just for the board.
Okay.
Well, I won't be at that meeting. I can't do a short thing like that. My schedule is already booked.
Okay.
And I think that's just unfair that you call a meeting on something. And
you want to change the time?
Everybody say, okay, we work full-time job. We can't do this. We can't do that. But it's like, okay, we can make ourselves available for this. No, so Thursday I'm not.
Can we do an executive session after the community roundtable on February 3rd? That's not unprecedented for us.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, that's good.
I think there are I think there is one matter of immediacy that would need to be discussed, but I think
I'm for as soon as we possibly can.
All right. Well, it sounds like February might be the soonest that we can, which isn't that far off.
Well, but if 4 people vote to hold a meeting, I mean that's the statute and that's the policy. I think there is at least I think there's at least, and it is a matter for closed session, so it can't be discussed in open session.
Can't discuss it at this.
So I think that, is there a time that is sooner than that? Because that's 2 weeks away. So is there a time before then that works for people? I think there's some matters that need to be addressed immediately, like a timing issue. So I guess that is, I'm willing to work with people's schedules. I get that.
Can I pose the question again? I know that you're saying that the conversation is not about my contract. Is the question about my evaluation? So if the board is holding a meeting, I would like to know if the conversation is in regards to those 2 items.
No, it is not in regards to your evaluation or your contract.
And so is the conversation in regards to me in my current capacity. So again, you know, a meeting is being scheduled, and typically when those meetings are being held, I'm just trying to gain clarity as to why I wouldn't be engaged or involved in the conversation around.
Well, these are, I don't, I'm gonna speak up here because I'd like to wrap this meeting up. I've got other things I need to do tonight. But I don't know what Trent has in mind. I'm not aware of what he's talking about. However, we are a board. It's a board meeting. And if the board wants to meet as a board without superintendent, I think we're allowed to do that. And so I don't know what this is about, Dr. Jameson, either. And but if he's asking that
I don't have any idea either.
I think we have to just meet as a board.
Yeah, and here's my thing. I don't have any idea either what it's about, but I mean, I think that there has been some expression of interest as us meeting, you know, amongst ourselves to talk about stuff, you know, in a manner where we can have frank and open discussions about things where, you know, staff isn't around. And I assume that's what the purpose of this is. So it's not anything to get, I mean, I don't know. I think I don't know if boards do it or not, but that's what has been expressed to me, I guess, in the past. And, you know, in the spirit of let's just see what happens, you know, I mean, that's why I'm voting for it, because I'm not going to, you know, prevent somebody from being able to talk about stuff. So that's my position.
Okay, thanks, Josh. It sounds like the meeting was voted on. It's Thursday at 6:30. Kat Norton will send us a link to meet.
Right.
Yeah,
Sounds
we need
good
an announcement and we need a link that's secure.
Move to adjourn.
I move to
Second.
adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Hi, everybody.
All right, bye.
Thank you.